Welcome back. In this video, we're going to be talking about how meditation saved my life and how it could possibly save yours too. So let's get right into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the channel. Welcome to Being Human. I'm excited to dive into meditation today, as meditation has been one of the tools and one of the practices that I honestly attest everything to. It's been something that transformed me from going from suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideation, really being in a place of suffering and mental disparity. I couldn't shut this voice up inside of my head. And every thought that would come in would be critical, would be negative, would be judgmental, would be mean and shaming. And whenever I do something wrong, it's like there was just so much weight associated with that, so much shame and so much guilt that I would feel, that I'd feel crushed by that mistake for weeks or months afterwards. And I was just in this place where it's like, it just felt like something about me wasn't working. Like I felt like something was fundamentally broken or fundamentally flawed with me. And the way that I saw the world and just what was happening in my body and what was happening in my mind and the actions that I would take and the habits that I would do and the things that would happen in my life. I was just like, none of this is working and none of this makes sense. And I don't know why it's like this. I have no idea why this is happening, but I want something different. And it was around the time that I was maybe 19 years old that I first kind of dipped my toes into meditation. Now, at this point in my life, I was mostly just a canoe polo player. I played for the national team. I was in the under 21 team at that time. And when meditation came into my life, it was more so around the focus of how can I be the best version of myself and how can I be the best polo player? And I heard about meditation through, I think, Stephen James, which ran Project Life Mastery. It was a YouTube channel that blew up, but he's not really doing that anymore. And where he kind of like introduced me to meditation was I just saw his being. I saw how he was being in the world. And he talked about how meditation was something that he found to have an incredibly positive and transformative effect on him. And I wanted something like that. It's like I saw him like that, and he was pursuing kind of like being the best version of himself too. And I was like, he's meditating and he says that it's having a transformative effect in his life and it's making him see the world way more positively. It's making him see the world way in a much more beautiful way. And I was like, I want to experience that too, because how I'm experiencing the world isn't necessarily like that. And so at the time it was like, okay, well, I can turn this into just using meditation for focus for sport. Because at the time I was really disciplined, mostly training full-time and go on and off between work stints and then just coming back to training full-time. And I really just wanted something to be able to harness and focus in my focus so that I could be more present, I could be more lasered, I could be more dialed in when I'm playing this sport. And so that's really where I took meditation from. I was like, okay, I want to be the best version of myself, but I'm mostly just going to apply meditation in the form of just focus and disciplining my focus and disciplining my attention. Because I don't know if you're like me, my attention was also all over the place. I could barely hold a conversation. I could barely hold things together. It's like my attention would go from here to here to here to here. I would start a million different things and I'd really finish nothing because I couldn't really focus. I couldn't really have my attention on something for a long period of time. And so I was like, okay, I also want to increase that because that's going to help in sport too. So that's really what led me to meditation, is I found it through sport. And I disciplined myself to meditating every single day. Probably about that time in my life, I think I started around 10 minutes. And I remember the first time that I experienced meditation. It was actually really wild and crazy. And I laugh so hard when I tell this story because what this story implies to me is how reactive I actually was. How reactive I was to the thoughts that I would think and the thoughts that would come into my mind at the time, and just how I would go from one thing to one thing without ever questioning why it was that I was doing that thing. So I was sitting in the 6th floor of my apartment. I crossed my legs, and I think I had a pallet bed at the time, and I had a yoga mat on the pallet bed just for now. And I was like sitting there, I was like, okay, I'm gonna set a timer for 10 minutes. I'm gonna close my eyes and I'm just gonna follow my breath, because that's all that meditation really is. It's following the breath. We breathe in and we breathe out every single day. Like, tune into your body right now and watch just your breathing. Watch how your chest rises. Watch how the air comes in through your nostrils or mouth. Watch how your chest falls when you breathe out. That's all that meditation is. So I set the timer for 10 minutes and I began to meditate. And literally, with no word of a lie, within 3 minutes, I had the thought, like while I was meditating with my eyes closed, I'm hungry, I should go eat something. And then I found myself in the fridge eating chicken. So I had like a roasted chicken. I think it was from Costco at this time because I was just worried about bulking. So I was eating this roast chicken at the time. And then it clued in of like, holy smokes, I'm supposed to be meditating right now. How did I get here? I wasn't even aware that I had a thought that said, oh, I'm hungry, I should go eat chicken. I just naturally found myself in the kitchen eating chicken. And I was like, wow, I'm supposed to be meditating. I'm not supposed to be eating chicken. And it wasn't even 10 minutes. It was literally 3 minutes into that 10-minute meditation. I was up already eating chicken. So I put the chicken back in, went back to meditation, sat myself down, and literally closed my eyes and started to breathe again. And then once again, I found myself in the washroom and I found myself peeing. And I was like, how did I get here? How did I get from sitting with my eyes closed to all of a sudden I'm peeing? How did that happen? And how wasn't I aware of what happened? And I was like, oh my God, now I'm 7 minutes into the meditation. I've already broken it twice. And now I'm peeing in a toilet. And I can't even sit still for 7 minutes with my eyes closed. Like I could have went and pee afterwards. I could have ate food afterwards. But there was something happening in my being that I was reacting to that got me up to eat the chicken, that got me up to take a pee. And that moment and that experience showed me of like, wow, I can't sit with myself. I can't be with myself and sit here with my eyes closed and simply just breathe for 10 minutes. Now that completely blew my mind and blew me out of the water of like, why couldn't I do that? Why was it that I would go eat chicken? Why was it that I would go pee? What caused that? And what was happening in my body and in my mind, in my being, that reaction took place? Because how I did one thing was how I did everything. I was that way with everything. I'd be working on a project and I would move to another project. I'd be working on a project, I would move to scrolling on my phone. I'd move to scrolling to my phone to doing something else. And it was like every day when I woke up, it was like I was going from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. Now I look back and I can see just how reactive I was. I call that reactive consciousness, meaning that I am just reacting to everything that's happening and unfolding, and that is just the way that I live my life. And there is an idea of unconscious within that. There's a part of being unconscious. I'm being unaware. I'm just reacting to my life. And so that was my first experience in meditation. Now that kind of opened up my eyes a little bit because I was like, wow, first of all, this is incredibly difficult. Second of all, I can't even sit still for 10 minutes. Like, what? And so I really began to discipline myself over time to continue to sit. And so I sat for 10 minutes and that kept on going and going and going. And day after day, I began to slowly settle in my body a little bit. I began to slowly relax. I began to be able to last for 10 minutes. Then I moved it up to 12. Then I moved it up to 15. Then I moved it up to 20. Then I moved it up to 21. Then there was a point in my life where I began to move, I'd say, like out of using meditation for focus in sport. This is when I found out that I was going to be a father. I ended up having this kind of whisper land when I found out I was going to be a father at 23, saying that the sport that I was playing is no longer relevant. So I get to give up the sport. And I spent my whole life pursuing canoe polo. I spent my whole life trying to become the best at the world in this one thing. And when that little voice and that little whisper asked me to give it up, I was like, I was a little bit scared. I was quite scared, to be honest. I was completely terrified because that's what I spent my whole life doing. I spent the last 7 years of my life at that time giving up school. I dropped out of school for sport. I broke up with relationships for sport. I gave everything I had to sport, to becoming the best in the world. And now my life is asking of me to let that go. And during that transition is when I really dove into meditation to the next level. Because what I found was I didn't know who I was anymore. If I'm giving up sport and I gave up everything in order to follow sport, I really landed in this place of like, who am I? I landed in what I call an identity crisis, where I no longer recognize who I am. I no longer how to navigate in the world. I no longer, like, something has happened where my world and the way that I've been seeing the world has radically shifted, radically changed, and radically fallen apart. Now, there's many ways to go through an identity crisis. This could be divorce. This could be the loss of a job. This could be death or illness, or something happened that just radically kind of rocks your foundation, rocks your world, so that you don't necessarily know who you are anymore. You don't necessarily know what to do anymore. You don't necessarily know where to go anymore. The thing and the old way of living that you were living is no longer relevant. You have to give that up, but you're not sure what you're stepping into. So for me, this was a very trivial and important point, not a trivial, it was a very important point of my life. Because when I stepped into the identity crisis, I didn't know who I was. And this is where I began to see of like, okay, something is happening here and it's not working. Like, I feel these incredible amounts of loneliness and this pain inside my chest. I feel these feelings and emotions that drive me to act and scroll on dating apps and scroll and distract myself. I find myself incredibly reactive to everything that's happening in my life. And I'm just beginning to open the door to meditation, began to, I'd say, consistently meditate for about two to 3 years at that point. But it was always shorter meditations. It was just for focus. Whereas like in this period of my life, it was like, okay, I really wanted to figure out who I was, and I really wanted to figure out what was going on with me at a deep level. Because what I found is that when I walked away from sport was kind of like my ego in a lot of ways. I played sports and was a national team athlete because it got me a lot of validation. It got me a lot of attention. It got me a lot of people looking into my life and being like, oh, Ethan, you're such a good person. You're this, you're so positive, you're so dedicated, you're so disciplined. And I got a lot of attention and validation from being that person in the world. And I also got a lot of hype and validation from being a national team polo player. Like, that's what I called myself. I found this identity. I found this sense of enoughness. I found this sense of worth, and I found this sense of validation through sport. And when sport was gone, I didn't have that anymore. And so I felt really lonely. I felt really disconnected. I was questioning who I was. I was questioning everything about me. Everything was beginning to unfold. And that's really when I dove into meditation and I took it seriously. Now, I want to say that I took it seriously with a fine grain of salt. You want to take meditation as serious as you want and as serious as what you feel is being called through your body. Because there's something said about like having a period of time where you discipline yourself to meditation. And this was the time of my life where I started to meditate for 20 minutes, then 30 minutes, then 40 minutes, then 50 minutes, and 60 minutes, and hours turned to multiple hours, turned into 1 hour, turned into 2 hours, turned into 3 hours, turned into 4 hours, turned into 5 hours. Then I would multiple for 5 hours, and then I would do that day after day after day after day. And so I went through this crazy phase in my life where I stopped eating, I began fasting more, my body began to change, I began to change because I just kept on following the breath. I got so curious into where that was taking me and what was happening in my body, what was happening in my being, the more that I just followed the breath. Because the more that you just follow the breath, the more awareness you grow around what's actually happening inside of you. And the best way that I can describe meditation is, for most of us, we walk through life with this tangled ball of yarn inside. Like, have you ever had headphones? Remember the corded headphones? And you would take them out of your pocket, they'd be all tangled. Well, I want you to imagine this tangled ball of yarn inside. And this is how most people walk around the world. This was how I was walking around the world. Now, that tangled ball of yarn comes from every experience that we've ever experienced in life, everything that's kind of shaped us and molded us into who and what we are. And we pick things up, we carry things that cause knots, that cause twists, that cause it to be kerfuffled in a lot of ways. And when that ball of yarn is in that knot, we don't operate the best in the world. We don't have focus. We don't have attention. We end up experiencing mental illness. Maybe physical disease begins to manifest itself in our life because we're not in order. We're not in harmony. We're operating in disharmony. And so I was in that space of like disharmony. I didn't know who I was. I was experiencing these crazy emotions that I didn't know what to do with them. And I kept on coping with porn, with drugs, with food, with alcohol, with all these different things. And I was just like, okay, I've got to figure out what's going on with me so that I can put this straight, mostly just because I have a son on the way. And that's what meditation is. Meditation really helped me close my eyes and begin to untangle the inner world, untangle the thoughts and the emotions and my being. Because there is a saying that as within, so without. What that means is that if your physical world and your external environment is a disaster and is chaotic, it's a mess, right? Maybe you're experiencing suffering, maybe you don't even know what's going on, maybe you're just being really reactive. Maybe life is just crazy and wild, and you're cheating on people, you're acting in habits and things that don't serve you, and you feel a tremendous amount of shame for those. Whether it's, for me, it was looking for men to have sex with on Craigslist or have sex with me, more specifically, or acting in ways just like scrolling social media, scrolling dating apps, just doing things to kind of like waste time and distract myself from actually being here. If your world is like that, if your physical environment is like that, it's because there's something happening inside of you that isn't in order. There's something happening inside of you that is in disharmony. And so what meditation is, meditation is the tool that takes that yarn, when we close our eyes and we follow our breath, that takes the yarn and we actually begin to unwind it. We begin to untangle it. Now, this takes some time to do, because for every amount of time that you've been alive, we have that many balls and knots and tightness and experiences that have shaped us, and emotions and pains and stuff that we have picked up over our lifetime and our time that our body is carrying. And so what we want to do is, meditation is that the process that begins to unwind everything. It begins to let go of everything. It begins to reorganize everything so that it can be in harmony. You can be in harmony with your body, with your mind, with your spirit. And then you can act accordingly in the world. Because if you put yourself in order, then your exterior world will be in order as well. Often people try to change their external situation and circumstances. We try to change the environment to match, kind of like to get it to be perfect, or to get it be controlled so that we know exactly what's happening, when the change that we're really looking for is within. Because when we change what's going on within, the natural reflection of within will begin to manifest itself outside of ourselves, and our environment and our circumstances will begin to change. This is exactly what happened for me. As I began to meditate more, I began to see just what was going on for me. I began to feel and tune into my body. I lived so disconnected from my body, from my emotions, from the feelings and sensations that I would feel, that instead of feeling them, I would disconnect by using porn, social media, all those different coping devices that we do, running away from just the sensations that are happening in the body. I'd feel so disconnected. And then when I began to meditate and meditate for those longer durations, I began to feel more connected to my body. I began to feel more connected to these sensations that I began to feel in my body that were overwhelming at first. They were very scary, because those are emotions and sensations that I've pushed away from most of my childhood. And so what ended up happening is, the more that I began to meditate, the more that I began to tune into those feelings, the more that I began to tune into my body, the more that I began to relax and open up my nervous system. Now, what this means, we're going to touch on a little bit of nervous system regulation. When we take an average human being that is coming out, let's say for me, before I meditated, my nervous system was really closed and really tight. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but that was kind of like the reflection of the chaos that was happening in my life at the time. Even though everything also seemed to be okay on the outside, I wasn't okay. There was feelings and sensations that I just like felt super desperate to run away from, but my nervous system was really closed. And this is much like the ball of yarn. It's kind of the same thing. It's like when that ball of yarn is there, that just means that our nervous system is closed. And as we meditate, we begin to relax the body. We begin to relax the body. And as the body relaxes, the nervous system begins to open. And as the nervous system begins to open, the body begins to respond to that. And the body begins to respond by feeling sensations and emotions that we haven't been willing to feel up until this point in our life, because we've suppressed them or we've pushed them away or whatever the case is. So as I began to meditate more, my nervous system began to open, that ball of yarn began to unwind, and I began to feel those sensations. I began to have memories and moments come up for me of things that I blocked out for most of my life. Like, this is when I was in an hour and 45 minutes into a 3-hour meditation. And hour and 45 into it, I became aware that I was sexually abused when I was 8 or 9 years old, maybe even 7 years old. I'm not too familiar in what time it was. I just remember that I was very small and like a little boy, like my son's age. And I didn't know that at the time. I blocked out that memory. Now, I'm sharing this because I'm not saying that that happened to you. I'm sharing this because it took me meditating for hours on hours on hours to soften my body, to relax my body, in order for it to open, to feel safe enough, to begin to open to memories and experiences that happened to me that I blocked and I pushed away, so that I can begin to feel those sensations, feel those emotions, to let go of them and bring my body back into harmony, bring my body back into order. Because what I didn't know at the time was how much that moment actually affected me, how much I actually held on to anger, to pain, to resentment, to bitterness, to sadness, to grief, to resentment, to the disgust that I had for myself, to the shame that I had for myself from that moment happening, and how that and those emotions were affecting me in this moment. Well, it makes sense that at 16 years old, I look for older men to have sex with me, because that's what I know. Wow. So things began to click in my life when I began to open up my body to meditation. So this is what honestly saved my life. It is the one tool, the one practice that I commend, like radically transformed and changed who I was as a human being fundamentally. And the more that I began to meditate, the more that I began to experience this feeling that I am not my thoughts, that these thoughts that I think, that reactiveness that was happening in me the first time I sat in meditation. Remember when I shared just a little while ago, I sat for 10 minutes. What would happen in my body is I would have a thought. I'd be sitting there with my eyes closed. I'd follow my breath. Then I'd have a thought that came in due to a sensation that I'd feel in my stomach or an emotion that I would feel. That emotion or sensation would trigger the thought to come in. The thought would come in saying, oh, I'm hungry. I should go eat the chicken that's in the fridge. And then that thought would then spark in me another thought of what that would feel like to eat that chicken right now. And I would begin to salivate to the point at which I would move from where I am, go to the kitchen and eat the food. The same thing happened when I was sitting, came back, I sat down and I was going to go pee. I came, I sat down, and then all of a sudden I felt this sensation in my body around my bladder. And it's like, okay, I have to go pee. And so instead of just being able to breathe and see the thought come in and out and choose to go pee after the meditation, I was so reactive to the thought that came in. It said, you have to go pee. And I went pee. So what meditation taught me is that as we follow the breath and as we breathe in and as we breathe out, as we close our eyes and do that practice, what we'll notice is that we have thoughts coming into our mind. And those thoughts are coming in mostly out of our awareness. We don't really know what's happening up here. We don't really know what we're thinking. We don't think about what we're thinking about often enough to catch them, usually when we're beginning meditation. Now, you may be at a more advanced state. You may be and have some experience meditating. I'm not too sure where you are in your journey, but what we'll notice is that these thoughts come in, and meditation teaches us to see the thoughts and to come back to just breathing in and out. To see the thought, to label it as a thought, to come back to breathing in and out. Much like how if we look up to the sky, the sun is shining through right now, we see clouds. And if you watch a cloud on a windy day, what you'll see is the cloud will start here and it'll zoom out of your horizon and you won't see it anymore. And the sky remains there, the sun remains there, but the cloud moves and goes across. Well, that's much like a thought. It's like deep inside of us, we have this part of us that is watching everything. That's the awareness, that's the observer, that is the thing that watches and sits back and watches the thought come and go, watches the other thought come and go, watches the next one pop in and go. And what meditation teaches us is that we are not those thoughts. It teaches us to develop space from our thoughts. This is where we begin at first. So we begin to get space, and the more space that we have, the less reactive we become. The more, I don't want to say in control, but the more that we begin to let go and expand our awareness into who and what we actually are, because who and what we actually are is the witness, is the observer. And a classic example I use just to highlight kind of the power of this and how you've probably experienced this to some degree is you may have had a thought at one point in your life to punch somebody in the face. Like, let's say you're walking down the street, you see somebody you don't really like, and you're like, oh, I wish I could just go up and sock them in the face, you know? But there's some part of you that doesn't do that. You have the thought of like, oh, I should just go punch him in the face, but you don't act on the thought. Well, who is the you that doesn't act on the thought? Well, that's the observer, the witness of that specific thought. Now, all that we want to do is become more aware of every single thought that we think, because the more that we can become aware of the thoughts that are happening in our sphere, the more that we can begin to identify with the awareness, with the observer, with the person who is watching. Because that is the place of non-reactivity. That is the place in which we are non-judgmental. That is the place in which our beingness actually originates from, is that place. Now, that radically transformed everything in my life. When I can still remember when I was sitting there in meditation, I had this light bulb moment where it was like, because I heard that you are not your thoughts before, but I never understood it experientially, because usually, typically, there's a gap between what we know and what we experience, right? When we first start a gratitude practice, often it feels like we're pulling teeth or pulling, like scratching nails on a chalkboard, because it feels very disconnected. We don't actually feel grateful. Whereas when when we begin to practice that over and over and over, eventually we get to a point where we begin to experience gratitude. We actually feel grateful. So that's the difference between knowing and experiencing. I knew that I was not my thoughts, but I didn't have an experience or experiences to back that up for me. And I remember the first moment that I sat in meditation, I sat there and I was like, holy smokes, I am not my thoughts. And I just had this crazy light bulb moment, and this amount of sensation and energy flow through my body in the understanding and the experiencing that I am not the thoughts that I think. And from that moment forward, my life began to radically open. Everything in my world began to change. I began to be less reactive and more responsive. And that's really what meditation teaches us. It's if our partner comes at us and says something, and you know how we just instantly react and we maybe get angry with them. Let's say that they come at us with maybe criticism, or they're telling us that we're not enough, or we're telling us that what we're doing is not enough or something. It's like, instead of reacting and just being like, yeah, no, but it's you, blah, blah, blah. It's like we have space to deal with that. We have space to be with that so that we can respond in how we actually want to respond. It's a way of being more loving. It's a way of noticing that these reactions are going to happen in our body and that we just get to breathe. So meditation honestly saved my life. It was the thing that transformed everything for me. It's what started the path of awareness and spirituality and understanding who I am. Now, I went on to meditate for longer periods of time. I've spent over 1,000 hours in meditation. I've been consistently meditating for a long period of time. Not that I'm counting either. I just want to share that because it's like, I've done this for a long time and I'm still learning. I still get caught by thoughts. I still get caught in the reactivity of my mind. And my goal every day, that's why I sit and practice, because I sit and I tune into the reactivity that's happening in my body, in my mind, especially the moments that I have my son. I'm very reactive with my son because he's just bringing out all of these parts of me that I get to look at. And so I'm still meditating. I'm still doing this practice too. And I'm still becoming aware of what is happening for me. But honestly, meditation was the thing that saved my life. I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't explore meditation, if I didn't experience meditation, and if I didn't experience the profound benefits of meditation, because not only does it help reduce suffering, it helps reduce anxiety, depression. It helps increase your joy, your energy, your peace, your state of being. It decreases stress in your body so that you can actually be relaxed and loose. And when you're loose, you just enjoy life more. Like, there are so many positive benefits to meditation that I saw even before science has come out to back it up now. But what we're going to see in the future, I can only imagine, is more meditation, more mindfulness being incorporated into every aspect of our lives because of how powerful and how transformative it actually is. And honestly, like, it just saved my life. I don't think that I would be alive today if I didn't find meditation. I think that I couldn't deal with the suffering, with the pain, with the emotions, with the experiences that I had to go through in my life if I never found it. And I was so thankful that I found it. So if meditation is something, if you feel like you're in a place where you don't understand what's going on for you, you're tired of feeling tired, you're tired of not understanding what's happening for you, you're suffering, you feel chaotic in your mind, you feel chaotic in your being, you can't focus, you lack attention. If you don't feel happy, or you're struggling with depression, with anxiety, if you're struggling with feelings and thoughts of suicide and all of those types of kind of programming and thoughts that are coming up for you, if you just want to know who it is that you are, and you feel this pull to exploring yourself in different ways, and you really want to set yourself straight. Like, for me, I just really wanted to figure out what was going on for me. I really wanted to understand why I felt like I was broken and why I felt like something was wrong with me or something was flawed. And so I just dedicated my life to honestly figuring that out. So if you feel like you're in that position, you're struggling, you don't know what's going on, you want to make a change, but you don't know where to begin, all that stuff, I begin recommending with the practice of meditation. Now, this is something that I recommend to every single client that I work with, every single person that comes into my world. I believe that meditation is so powerful. I'm not necessarily talking about taking a walk. I'm not talking about listening to music and dancing or doing something that you think is a form of meditation. What I'm talking about is actually sitting down and closing your eyes and following your breath. It's very simple. Now, those are other forms of meditation, yes, but there is something to be spoken about literally just being with yourself. I think it was the problems that we see today are man's inability to sit in a quiet room by himself with his own thoughts. Most of our suffering, most of the pain that we see in the world comes from us. It comes from our inability to be with our own experience and our own sensations, our own pain, our own suffering. And so instead of being with it, we just project it into the world. If you're tired of hurting people, if you're tired of causing suffering for others, if you're tired of not showing up and saying and being the person that you say you are, meditation is for you. And so the best thing that I recommend doing is, if you're brand spanking new to meditation, you've never meditated before, the best thing that I recommend is honestly grabbing your phone, setting a timer for 10 minutes, beginning with 10 minutes, sitting down with your legs crossed, as comfortable as you can. If you're sitting in a chair, perfect. I would recommend also lying down, but I would be cautious of doing it very early morning and also very close to bedtime, because chances are you'll probably fall asleep. Now, there's nothing wrong if you do fall asleep, because meditation does have that effect on people, which is also beautiful to see, because if you fall asleep when you're in meditation or when you're meditating, it is a sign and it is a flag of like, hey, your body has been so tight, has been so tense, that the moment that you begin to breathe, the moment that you begin to relax, it begins to fall asleep. That's your body's response to not having that relaxation, not having that space that comes from meditation, because meditation is very relaxing. It's very peaceful. It's just following the breath and allowing the body just to, So I'd recommend, if you're new, I'd recommend 10 minutes, close your eyes, put on a timer, follow the breath, and try your best not to check your phone. Try your best to trust that when the timer will go off, and that you'll be okay. If you have to open your eyes in between, which I also did sometimes, I did, especially in the longer duration, I'd be like, is the timer still working? Because there'd be a part of me that's freaking out because I didn't feel safe. And that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother video. But just set it for 10 minutes, close your eyes and follow your breath. And what I recommend over everything is discipline. If you can do it every single day, you are going to see the most transformative benefits of meditation for you and for your life. Now, if you can't do it every single day for 10 minutes, what I'd recommend is doing it every single day for an hour. Now, that's just a joke. It's this kind of like idea that it's a really funny kind of like parable or story that I believe a Buddhist monk ends up telling somebody. And a person ends up coming to see a monk, and they're like, hey, I don't have time to meditate for 20 minutes a day. And the Buddhist monk is like, awesome, meditate for 1 hour then. Because typically we get caught in this idea that we don't have time. And if we get caught in that thought that we don't have time, and we live from that space that we don't have time, that is simply a thought that we are thinking, and it's a thought that we are trapped into, and we are constantly buying into that. Whereas meditation teaches us to breathe, to relax, to let go of the thought, so that we can operate from a different place. Because for most of us, that drives our life. I don't have enough time. And if we're thinking that, we'll experience that, but it's just a thought. And it's just a thought that we can escape. And I know that might be a little bit, no, it's not true, I don't have time. Honestly, discipline yourself every single day and you will see the biggest bang for your buck. Now, if you can't do every single day, obviously every other day, the more that you put into this is the more that you're going to get out of this. The reason why I saw such a transformative benefit and a transformative effect in my life is because I was able to sit for long periods of time for weeks in a row. I was working very minimally at the time so that I could just really spend time on figuring out who I was. But do what you have with what you can and make it happen, and discipline yourself if you can every single day. Now, that's if you're a beginner. If you're an intermediate, I always recommend 21 minutes to 30 minutes of meditation, just a little bit longer duration of meditation, because what I find is that it takes a little bit of time for the body to drop. It takes a little bit of time for the body to relax and open before we really get into the deeper kind of aspects of meditation. So if you're new, start for 10 minutes. If you're a little bit more advanced and intermediate, start for 21 to 30 minutes. And then if you want to take another step into really pushing some things, try meditating for an hour or two. Try meditating for 3 hours. Try meditating for 4. Try spending a full day in meditation and just see what happens for you, right? As we begin to push these boundaries, we begin to push these boundaries in ourselves of like, why can't I sit for a full day in meditation? While I'm sitting in meditation, I'm like, well, I got to do this and I got to do this and I got to do these things. I got to do these things. Those are all thoughts that are going through our mind. And if we're being run by those programs, then we are reacting to what is happening to us, not choosing to respond. And it's a very powerful practice. So I fundamentally believe that you're in any position that I talked about where you're struggling, you're suffering, or maybe you just want to experience more joy and peace. Meditation is for you. And from my experience, I truly believe and fundamentally believe that meditation can change and also save your life like it did mine. So thank you so much for being here. If you have any questions about this, if you have any questions about meditation at all, just drop them in the comments down below. Send me an email, reach out to me on social media or Instagram. I'm more than happy to help guide and precipitate in any way, shape, and form. I say precipitate as in like I don't know if that's the right word for it, but it's to kind of like help bubble and help grow. I kind of imagine that as like a popcorn kernel going into a hot pan. Eventually it begins to pop. If I can do anything to kind of help that process, help that for you, I'm more than willing and more than happy. Honestly, that's what my life is dedicated to, is being of service in this capacity. And so I just invite you to reaching out. I'll also be sharing a couple guided meditations through the YouTube channel in a decent amount of time. In the next month, you'll probably see a couple guided meditations come out, which will be a wonderful way to kind of like also introduce yourself to meditation. That can also be really helpful. It's because meditation, and I can also share an instructional video of like how to actually meditate, what to look for. I did build a meditation course, and it's actually a 5-week course of meditation teaching you 4 different types of meditation and also an introduction into it and everything you need to know to get started with that. If you want access to that, just DM me on Instagram or end up sending me an email at ethanelliscoaching.com, and I'll be able to kind of forward that and link you to that, which will be really helpful and really transformative. It's a really beautiful kind of course that I put together, sharing everything that I learned and everything that I knew and everything that I wish I knew as well. So yeah, happy meditating, happy enjoying the practice, really tuning into yourself. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work on yourself, and thank you for being a part of my life and a part of my journey. I'm very honored and very grateful that I get to do what I do and I get to be who I am in this world. And I'm grateful that you're here with me, being who you are and doing what you do in the world, because every ripple that we impact and we share with each other goes out and affects everything in our environment, everything in our lives. And it's just about spreading more love. So if you have any questions, comments, drop them in the comments down below. Until I see you on another video, peace and love from my heart to yours.